So back to your question, we want to get adoption. Let's say we want to get adoption with all cryptocurrencies. But let's start, let's say, Ethereum, just throwing it out there. Well, we go out to the Ethereum community. That's miners, that's developers, that's nodes, that's users, everybody out there. And we come and say, oh, here's a solution. It's open source. It costs you nothing. You never have to pay for it, for anything, if you don't want to. Add additional services if you want to. And then we go to the miners and say, well, if you use bloXroute, you're going to hear about blocks faster than if you don't use it. For miners, getting the block faster is money in the pocket. Okay? He has one additional second to mine on top of the block. That's one, let's say, that's something like, what, 1% that they get in order, like that increase in revenues. They also want their block to be sent very fast to the other miners because, specifically in Ethereum, if you mine a block, you have a chance to mine the real next block, or it could be an uncle block, right? If it's included in the blockchain, but not really getting the reward. That could be like 20, 30% of your reward. If you know that you can get your block faster to everyone, so it increases your chances or reduces your chances of becoming an uncle block, and it's really money in the pocket. Do you take it or not? If it's for free and you never have to pay for it, I think it's an easy decision to make. So that's for them. For users and for the community, so I have the full intention of, once we have our POC ready, to show, right now we're making an argument why it should work. We're going to deploy a network. We're going to show, oh, this is the performance you're getting without bloXroute. This is the performance that you get with bloXroute. And with that, with something working at hand, I can go to Vitalik and say, oh, take a look. I don't need Vitalik's consent for that. You don't need a consensus to start using bloXroute. Whoever wants to use it, right? It's protocol agnostic. You don't have to change anything in the blockchain or the protocol or the implementation. But whoever wants to start using it can start using it. So I'm going to approach the community leaders, if you like, as well. And going to the general community, saying, oh, this is something. Everybody are trying to get scalability right. Everybody are trying to work so hard for them. You have sharding, you have lightning, you have really sophisticated schemes that you try to solve. We're like, oh, we remove the bottleneck for you. You can do now whatever you want. Do you want larger blocks? Do larger blocks. Do you want them in shorter time intervals? Do shorter time intervals. That's your decision. Go and compete with the other cryptocurrencies on getting real world traction. We got that thing, that scalability bottleneck, we got that covered for you. Make sense?
Makes sense. I didn't realize it was a softball question.
all the questions are softball. Sure.
Sure. So, first of all, thank you for the presentation. It's a very good overview. Do you view that this is eventually like routing? You're using this trustless routing, very provably unbiased mechanism to route blocks in a faster way. Do you view the future as being like most blockchains will be driven by a federation of these things, like these routers, or are you trying to position bloXroute as being like I guess I'm going to look at the question is how do you build bloXroute and not make it to where competitors give away this infrastructure advantage that you're providing different blockchains. And so I don't just connect to bloXroute, you connect to FlashRoute, you connect to whatever other mechanisms also facilitate routing for you.
So that's a good question. What you're actually asking is something like, how do you prevent multi-hoping, right? What if a new blockchain distribution comes? Well, we're open source, right? We make everything so everyone can see what they're running. We open source our code. What prevents a new blockchain distribution network, BDN2, to come and offer exactly the same thing? And let's start competing on the price and race to the bottom and these kind of stuff. Is that your question?
Yeah, I guess because most of what you're providing is the in some sense it's redundant in that they're going to get blocks anyway. So if I can use another service and that service is free, I can also use bloXroute. bloXroute's a little bit faster. The other routing mechanisms fall back.
So another softball. We're always for free. You run a node, you run a miner, you get this fast propagation of blocks. You hear about blocks fast, yours go out fast. You never have ever pay us anything. Okay, that's not our business model. We're not trying to give you that and then somebody else can give you another offer, etc. So on that level, we just give you something. It costs you nothing. You could use somebody else if you'd like to. It doesn't make much sense for you, A, because we're always going to be better. We have, the first mover advantage. We are networking experts, crypto experts. It's going to be very hard for somebody to keep up with that and try to compete on that. But regardless, why would they? Right? They're coming to you and they try to do that. So our business model is not to come and try to say, hey, let's do a subscription. Pay me $5 a month to use bloXroute services. And the reason we will never do anything like that is we can't prevent you from using bloXroute if you don't pay me. So I can never charge you anything to use it, because if I could, then I'm not privileged neutral. That's kind of, you shouldn't use me anyway. So going back to what do you do about competition? So competition will or might try to come. But our business model is the following. We give scalability for everyone. And out of all this value that we create, increasing scalability by a factor of 1,000, we give something like 99.9% of the value to users and miners. Okay? We're scaling cryptocurrencies so users can pay 100 times smaller fees, while miners, each transaction fee is 100 times smaller, but their total sum is 1,000 times bigger, so they get 10x more fees. So they're getting almost all the value of this scalability. We don't enforce it because we can't enforce anything, but we allow users, those who make the transaction, they can choose to pay bloXroute a fraction of the mining fee if they choose to. Now, why would they choose to? This is not a donation-based model. Okay? The idea is users can choose to pay bloXroute because they know it would reduce the total fee that they have to pay. Because miners would require a smaller fee, a smaller incentive for these kind of transactions. And why would miners require a smaller fee for that? Because miners know that we give all this capacity to blockchains, but we add even further capacity for transactions that do pay to bloXroute. And in addition to that, the more transactions that pay to bloXroute, we actually increase the capacity for those who don't pay to bloXroute. So if you're a miner, you see transaction, you do the regular thing, right? That you can choose the best one that pay you the most money. But when you see transaction that pays to bloXroute, you're like, oh, that's not competing with the other transactions, right? I have almost infinite capacity for that. I can put it there. It actually increases my capacity for transactions that don't pay to bloXroute. So miners require less incentive to include the argument, or less fee. So our business model is to give all of it for free to everyone. And those who want to reduce their fees even further, if you're a microtransaction business, you do 10 or 100 transactions per second, you really want to reduce that amount. So going back to your question, what happens when competition comes? Well, first of all, competition can come in and say, oh, we do exactly the same thing. They're going to have a very hard time explaining to nodes and miners why they should use them. That's a starting point, right? Because they add no additional value. But the real target, the real crowd they'll have to capture is the users, right? Those who are actually making the transaction and deciding, do I pay a fraction to bloXroute or do I pay a fraction to BDN2, the new competitor? And if you're BDN2 and you come, oh, you know what, guys? Everything I offer exactly the same service, only at 50% off. Well, that 50% off, that's actually most of what the user is paying, 90% of that, that's the mining fee. BDN2 doesn't help you with that. So 50% off is really 5% discount. That's what you were getting if you move to that. That's a starting point. There's additional to that. There is a strong networking effect there, that if you're the first person to move bloXroute for BDN2, then you just moved from a bloXroute paying transaction, a reduced fee transaction. You pay BDN2. Well, the miner knows you're no longer a bloXroute paying transaction. You no longer get the reduced fee. You actually have to pay a higher fee, right? A regular fee. So when BDN2 comes around and it has to come to you as a user, you take your Starbucks, you take your phone to Starbucks and you want to buy coffee with crypto, you can choose BDN2. It's going to cost you more. That's a really hard pitch to give. So that was the entire business model in 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think I just have one thing to add to Rui's explanation, which is like a lot of these things that if we are providing value, if we are behaving honestly and everything, right? It's a very hard pitch to make. However, if we don't, right? So suppose we decide, oh, we're just going to get lazy and not provide value, right? Then it does open the opportunity for a competitor to come in and scoop us, right? And I think that, at least to me, was part of the value of bloXroute, where we're forced to stay honest all throughout our lifespan, because at any point a competitor can come in and outcompete us, especially because we're open sourcing everything. So it's like we have to stay ahead of the curve, and we have to keep providing the best service that we can, or else someone else could come in and easily make the pitch that we just outlined for everyone. And either way.
I would just like to add something. Unlike these guys, I'm a professor here, so I cannot talk for 1 hour. I'm joking. So basically, the question coming off in here is like, hey, we can decide that we're gonna be evil at some point, so what stops us? And we, as you can see, are very nice guys, but many people are very nice until they make a lot of money and then they decide not to be nice, right? So in addition to all these things that economic and all other barriers that they talked about, I happen to work for 10 years in computer networking, and my specialty is on network neutrality. And so it's a field where you can actually, we're making proofs, and we are making sure that the network is actually behaving in a way that we want it to behave. Okay, so it doesn't matter if Soumya and we look nice, but then in the middle of the night we decide to be bad guys. It really all comes out of science, all these proofs, and so we may look this way or that way, but it really boils down to having really serious proofs that can actually make all of this work as it should.
More questions? Or follow-up?
Yeah, I'll have a follow-up. So I think that's very well. So what portion of the scalability problem is the actual propagation of the blocks versus the actual validation of the blocks that are receiving as a node, or any other overhead mechanisms?
So this is highly dependent on the blockchain, of course. You could just say, to validate every transaction, I'm going to create this super inefficient blockchain where I sleep for 10 seconds, right? Well, that sleep right there is your scalability bottleneck, right? But I think all of the three bottlenecks, if you're looking at I/O, like disk, CPU, and network, I think network is the most complicated to deal with. There's all sorts of crazy things that happen on the internet, and it's really hard. You're dealing with a heterogeneous environment. With at least with the CPU and disk bottleneck, you can spin up a machine, you can benchmark it, you can see it without much effort. Testing a large distributed system is hard work in getting that right. So I think the network bottleneck, as we're seeing evidence of in Bitcoin and Ethereum, at least for now, it is the bottleneck. But even then, we are starting to see lots of strides in CPU, in reducing validation time, and making the disk more efficient. But the network is just this whole other beast.
Can I throw a few numbers at you?
Yeah.
So, talking Bitcoin, okay, kind of like golden standard. Okay, it's true for all other blockchains. And Soumya is correct that it really depends on the blockchain. But I can tell you that if you take a commodity PC, okay, your PC at home that has 4 cores, it can validate something like 3,000 transactions per second. Okay, so that's the order of magnitude that we're talking about. Now, if you're a miner and you have to validate more, it's okay for you to buy a stronger machine just to do that. So validating transaction happens very fast. In comparison, Peter Reason from the Bitcoin Unlimited team made a presentation in November. They have their gigablock test feature. They want to see how far can we push Bitcoin. So they tried, and so I really like these guys. And what they did is say, oh, the first thing that they figured out is that as they were increasing the block size, etc., the first bottleneck they found wasn't a real bottleneck. It was the implementation of Bitcoin Core, who put transaction in the mempool on a single thread. So you start increasing transaction per second, and you max out at 100 transactions per second because it's done on a single thread. So Andrew Stone from Bitcoin Unlimited built how to do that in over several threads in parallel and remove that bottleneck. So we took that, or let's not walk that up, but then they said they deployed something like roughly 10 nodes, okay, out of which 4 to 6 are miners, and try to see how many transactions per second they can actually push. And that was running on DigitalOcean. Okay, so think tiny network, okay, 10 nodes running on a cloud infrastructure. And they were able to push transactions, to push that up to something like 500 transactions per second in a tiny network until block propagation stopped them from going forward at that point. And that's really best networking environment you could dream of, tiny network. If you think about the real Bitcoin, okay, deployed globally, nodes in all sorts of weird topologies, all sorts of congestion and bottleneck and these kind of stuff. The real bottleneck is much lower, but I can tell you for a fact that, what stops us from going forward? Really, it is the network. Okay, the network, you can do maybe 1 order of magnitude, you can't do 2. It breaks somewhere in between.
So just to elaborate on that question, obviously, if you test.
Do that. No, it's not.
So I guess as a follow-up
Now
to
it's
that,
on.
thank you, Shane. So as a follow-up to that question, obviously if you increase the block propagation speed, you're going to decrease the number of uncles. You're going to test.
Now it's on.
So if you increase the block propagation speed, you're going to decrease the number of uncles at a given transaction rate. I guess my question about the bottlenecks and like whether or not like my piece and my node can actually process these transactions that quickly. Is there a point at which, like, let's say that Ethereum went, decided that they wanted to go from, targeting like 14 or 15 second block times down to something like, like 4 or 5 second block times? Is there a point at which you're feeding me blocks so fast because like everybody else in the network is receiving these blocks in this from like a CDN type resource that they get the blocks so fast and they propagate them that like I've just reintroduced the uncle problem, and now the overhead of the uncle problem is worse because you've magnified it, you've increased the number of, you know what I'm saying? Like, I guess like how do you pinpoint that the second bottleneck? I'm sold that the block propagation time is the first one. How do you pinpoint bottleneck number 2?
So let's straighten this out. So your question is right, but we have to kind of identify a few things in order to get a good explanation for that. So if you want, it doesn't matter, we can talk, Ethereum is using uncle blocks, which is just like, you had a fork, but we're going to include the fork in the blockchain to keep the security properties of that. So it's really just a fork, okay? So in Bitcoin, it's just forked off. In Ethereum, it's forked off, but somehow included in the blockchain for the security. But it's really about the probability of a fork happening. So if we want, how does the fork probability relate to scalability? If you want to increase the throughput by a factor of 10, you can increase the block size by 10, or you can reduce the time between blocks by 10. You'll get the same thing, right? So a Bitcoin block today is 1 megabyte, average transaction is 540 bytes. So it processes 1900 transactions every 10 minutes, or 3.3 transactions per second. One thing that you can do, which is kind of the most obvious, increase the block size, right? You move from 1 megabyte to 10 megabytes. That means that every node that has, now you mine a new block, you have to send it to your peer. Now you have to send 10 megabytes rather than 1 megabyte, right? That's going to take you, at best, 10 times longer, if we ignore congestion, etc., etc. And the total time it takes for the block to reach the entire network increases by the same factor. That is critical because that block propagation time, that's the window of opportunity in which forks happen naturally. A fork only can happen if you didn't hear about the block in time. Now, the probability of a fork really depends on the ratio. It's something like 1 minus e to the power of, and the ratio between the block propagation time and the time between blocks. So it doesn't matter if you increase the block size by a factor of 10, and you'll get 10 times more forks, or reduce the time between blocks, the 10 minutes interval in case of people. The result is pretty much exactly the same, or it is the same until you go to very, very, very low time intervals between blocks. So to your question, it doesn't really matter if you scale it by increasing the block size or reducing the time between blocks. The result is the same. So when you say, oh, what happened if you reduce, let's say, the time between blocks by a factor of 10, what is going to happen? Exactly the same thing that's going to happen if you increase the block by a factor of 10. So
Test. So I buy that explanation. So if we increase the number of blocks that are propagating across the network and then my node has to transact, we increase the number of actual blocks I'm receiving by 10x, and I have like 10x the number of uncles. Right?
So no, if you don't use blocks,
yeah. So I guess maybe the simplest way that I can get an answer like really quick on this is how much time does like a given node actually work on processing an uncle and finding out it's bad? Is that a large percentage of the time it spends in computation or not?
Do you want to answer? Okay. So it's not about receiving an uncle block and understanding that it's wrong or something like that. Okay, it's about what you're actually asking, if I understand you correctly, is, oh, but if you increase like the throughput here, will my node that I'm running on my machine, can that receive so many blocks so fast? Can I handle it? That's kind of like your question?
Yeah, and I guess specifically with relationship to the amount of time I spend processing uncles. Like I guess like that the ratio of time I'm spending, the proportion of time I'm spending validating a block today, is a lot of it's spent navigating those uncles. It seems like that could be a very realistic bottleneck.
So I think that like we consider ourselves as enablers, right? We don't do our own blockchain. We don't try to do our own cryptocurrencies. We enable all blockchains and all cryptocurrencies to scale. So my initial reaction is to tell you, I remove the bottleneck, and you could do that in a number of ways. Ethereum will do one thing, Ethereum Classic will do something else, and the blockchain that does it the best way will prevail and get real world traction. And those who screw up in the process will disappear over time because they're not doing it right. So you could reach that point if you don't do it right? So you have to think, what's the best parameters for the time between blocks? What's the best parameters for the size of the block? And you can experiment with that, and you can try different stuff. If you want them, yes, sure. But that's kind of like the real answer.
That's a good answer.
I'd like to say something very blunt. And basically, whenever we talk about bloXroute, I come up with this example. We are just now talking about like, hey, we have these sample blocks, and in, for example, Bitcoin, we have 1 megabyte block coming every 10 minutes. So if we change a little bit, things are gonna get screwed and stuff like that. And whenever I hear this argument, I say YouTube currently serves 1.3 billion users, and it sends terabytes of data every single second. And nobody blinks an eye. We are all like, sure, of course, it's 21st century, like, of course, the network is good. And when you see that circle, and something gets delayed a little bit, you're like, where is this world going to? I'm gonna close my eyes. Okay, I can't handle this, this is the end of the world. Okay, this is one story. And the other story here is you have 10,000 users sending 1 megabyte every 10 minutes, and we are talking like, can we do 2 megabytes? I'm not sure, maybe we can, maybe we cannot. So at a very blunt level, we're not going into details about uncles and all this stuff. Of course we can. We put this beast in the middle which when I say beast, I think of bloXroute, we put it in the middle, and the real problem here is, I'm going back to that, if we put that it's neutral, we can still get the scalability of the YouTube and Akamai and Amazon, whatever you want, and still do this thing. Very efficient. So this would be my blunt version of like, sure we can.
Sure, also a good answer.
Sorry, we've got time for about one more question, and then we'll have networking afterwards, so last question.
Which is kind of like the same thing. Asking a question, we're all. How does this interact with the Lightning Network and sharding and microchains and some of the other proposals for scaling blockchains?
So we composed pretty well with this. So if you look at Lightning, for example, these are what people call layer 2 solutions. Those compose perfectly with bloXroute. So if Lightning enables, just making up numbers, 100 times more transactions, bloXroute enables 1,000 times more transactions, well, you just got 100,000 times more transactions. So we actually play very, very nicely with these scaling solutions, and I think the reason goes back to something at the very beginning of the talk, which is no matter what you do, everyone has to agree on a state, and how fast that happens it's regardless of what you do on top. At the end of the day, everyone needs to agree on what that state is, and by making that faster, right, we actually help all of the other layers above, where I think most of the innovation has gone in terms of solving the scale.
But I guess the question is, let's see, can I get it?
So I just want to add a few more details to what Soumya said. So Lightning is the idea of, can we do, I don't know, 100 transactions off-chain for every transaction that we do on-chain? I allow you to scale the number of on-chain transactions by a factor of 1,000. So we're working perfectly with that. If Lightning allows you to do so-and-so transaction per second, or off-chain for every on-chain transaction, you just have to multiply the two. If you were talking about sharding, does that make sense? If you're talking sharding, is pretty much saying, oh, one blockchain is not efficient enough. Let's do 100 blockchains that kind of like interleave with each other. So the security of each shard, which is just like a smaller piece of the blockchain, kind of like the security of all of them are kind of like combined in like this sophisticated way. But you can take bloXroute and turn each shard, if we scale each shard by a factor of 1,000, you get exactly the same thing. Okay, so you could add it, you combine it with sharding, you can combine it with Lightning, you combine it with pretty much anything. You can combine it with DAG, kind of like protocols. You can combine it pretty much with everything that you want. What we're really doing is telling you, oh, you're currently using Comcast or AT&T or whoever is your internet service provider, and that isn't a very efficient way to use it. Send it through bloXroute. It's optimized exactly for that. It's 1,000 times faster, which allows you all the sophisticated layer 2 or layer 1 solution other stuff. They work just as well with bloXroute. We just moves information around that much faster than sending it on the public internet.
But I guess in the case of sharding, if you've reached a critical mass where most miners are using you to do their network routing, do you have to kind of re-reach that equilibrium on the shards, or how does that work?
So a nice thing about, so first of all, we plan to go out before that, but the nice thing is the following. If you're a miner and you're like, oh, should I use bloXroute? Well, that's a competitive advantage, right? You can get to blocks faster, you make more money, or you can have your blocks go out faster, you will make more money. After some percentage of the miners start using it, it moves from being a competitive advantage to a competitive necessity. Everybody else are using it. You can choose not to, but everybody else are going to be that much faster than you, and you're going to be always forked off. So the idea is that this should be a super easy decision for every miner. Like, you can choose not to, but you might as well go to your internet service provider and say, I want the 1 megabyte bandwidth. Like, I have this mining operation, but I want stuff to move very slow for me. So you don't really need to have per sharding anything. But the idea is that every node, every miner benefit from using bloXroute. It costs you nothing, literally nothing, ever. So it's kind of like, Do you need an equilibrium per shard? You don't really need that. What happens if a shard that doesn't have, like the nodes or miners don't use that? Well, it won't be as effective, but the idea is to give a very strong incentive for everyone to use bloXroute.
Thank you.